Sarah's text lit up my phone during a board meeting. Mom's having her 60th birthday party at the Grand Haven Hotel. She says you're not invited to the VIP section. James agreed with her. My own husband, siding with his mother again. I kept my expression neutral as I ended the call with our Tokyo investors, my finger hovering over my sister-in-law's message. The irony would have been laughable if it wasn't so painful. The Grand Haven Hotel was just one property in the luxury hotel chain I'd built from the ground up over the last decade, a fact my mother-in-law, Margaret, had no idea about. To her, I was just her son's trophy wife, a pretty face who'd trapped her precious boy into marriage. Ms. Chen, the Singapore team is ready for their update, my assistant Andrew reminded me. I nodded, pushing thoughts of Margaret's party to the back of my mind. I had an empire to run, even if my in-laws thought I spent my days getting manicures and shopping. The thing about assumptions is that they're easy to make and hard to correct. When I met James 5 years ago, I was already a successful businesswoman, but I kept my professional life private. My company operated under my Chinese family name, Chen, while I used James's surname Williams in my personal life. It wasn't intentional deception, just a separation of worlds that had proven useful over the years. Margaret had made her opinion of me clear from day one. A girl from nowhere, she'd said to James, loud enough for me to hear. No family connections, no proper education. She'd never bothered to ask about my background, and I'd never bothered to correct her assumptions. James, eager to keep peace, had always brushed off his mother's behavior. It's just how she is, he'd say. She'll warm up to you eventually. 5 years later, I was still waiting for that warmth. I finished my calls and pulled up Sarah's text again. The party was this weekend, a lavish affair for 300 guests at my flagship hotel. Margaret had been working with my events team for months, though she'd never met the owner. Me, she just dealt with the managers, throwing around James's name to demand special treatment. Andrew, I called. Get me Thomas from the Grand Haven. Thomas, my hotel manager, answered on the first ring. Ms. Chen, I was just about to call you about Mrs. Williams's birthday party. She's been quite demanding. I could imagine. Tell me everything. The list was extensive. Margaret had insisted on the presidential suite at a discount because her son was friends with the owner. She demanded exclusive use of the VIP lounge where she planned to host an intimate gathering for select guests after the main party. A gathering I wasn't invited to, despite being her daughter-in-law. She mentioned you might come, Thomas said carefully. She was quite specific about where you should be seated. In the back, by the kitchen entrance. Of course she was. I pulled up the guest list on my laptop. All of Hartford's elite would be there. Judges, politicians, old money families. People Margaret had spent her life trying to impress. People who, ironically, I often sat with in boardrooms and charity committees, though she didn't know that. Thomas, maintain all her arrangements, I decided. But I want the security team briefed. And make sure Vincent is bartending the VIP lounge. Vincent was our best mixologist, and more importantly, he knew exactly who I was. The day of the party arrived bright and clear. James had left early to help his mother prepare, leaving me to get ready alone. Mom thinks it's better if we arrive separately, he'd said, not meeting my eyes. You understand, right? I understood perfectly. I chose my outfit carefully, a simple black Chanel dress, elegant but understated. No need to compete with Margaret's guaranteed extravagance. I arrived exactly on time, walking into the grand ballroom I'd helped design 3 years ago. Margaret had outdone herself. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing in the corner. She stood holding court near the entrance, resplendent in a red designer gown, James dutifully by her side. Oh, you came, she said when she spotted me, her smile not reaching her eyes. The general seating is that way. James, darling, help me greet the mayor. I watched them walk away, noting how James's shoulders tensed. He knew what his mother was doing was wrong, but he'd never stand up to her. Not without a push. I made my way to my assigned table, next to the swinging kitchen doors. A few other outcasts were seated there. The second cousins Margaret tolerated, a neighbor she felt obligated to invite. They avoided my eyes, not wanting to be associated with the snubbed daughter-in-law. The evening progressed exactly as Margaret had planned. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and then came the announcement about the VIP gathering in the exclusive lounge. Only those with golden wristbands. Margaret trilled into the microphone. James, make sure all our special guests find their way upstairs. I watched as half the party made their way to the elevators, golden bands glinting on their wrists. James cast a guilty look my way before following them. Perfect timing. I pulled out my phone and texted Thomas, time for phase 2. The next hour was a masterclass in subtle revenge. First, the air conditioning in the VIP lounge mysteriously malfunctioned, blasting heat instead of cool air. Then the premium liquor bottles kept coming up empty when Margaret's favorites were ordered. Small inconveniences, nothing too obvious. I sat at my kitchen-adjacent table, sipping champagne and waiting. 3, 2, 1. Right on cue, Margaret came storming out of the elevator, her face flushed with anger and heat. "Where is the manager?" she demanded. "This is unacceptable. Do you know who I am?" Thomas appeared, perfectly professional. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Williams?" "Everything is a problem. The air conditioning, the drinks, the service. I want to speak to the owner right now." "Of course," Thomas said smoothly. "Ms. Chen is actually here tonight." Margaret's face turned triumphant. "Finally, where is she?" I stood up from my table by the kitchen, smoothing my dress. "Right here, Margaret." The silence that fell over the ballroom was absolute. Margaret stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. James, who had followed his mother downstairs, went pale. That's not possible," Margaret sputtered. "You're just what?" I asked quietly. "A trophy wife. A girl from nowhere. The owner of this hotel and the entire Grand Haven chain. All of the above, actually." The whispers started. Of course, half the people here knew me as Ms. Chen, the businesswoman. They were just now connecting the dots. "Ms. Chen," Thomas said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "shall I have the air conditioning repaired in the VIP lounge?" "No need," I replied. "I think the party's moving back down here." I turned to the gathered crowd. "Drinks are on the house, everyone. Consider it a birthday gift to my mother-in-law." The next hour was chaos, but the kind I'd orchestrated. Margaret's carefully curated VIP group dissolved as guests migrated back to the main ballroom. Many coming to greet me, not as James's wife, but as Ms. Chen, the CEO they'd worked with for years. James approached me, his face a mix of shock and something else. Was it admiration? "Why didn't you ever tell me?" he asked. "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were too busy defending your mother's assumptions about me." He flinched. "Lily, Ms. Chen, the mayor's wife, descended on us. I had no idea you were James's wife. You must join us for the charity gala planning next week." I smiled. Of course, though I usually prefer to be seated away from the kitchen. The mayor's wife had the grace to look embarrassed. She'd been at the VIP gathering after all. As the night wound down, I found Margaret sitting alone at what had been my table, staring at nothing. The irony wasn't lost on me. "The service is better here than you'd think," I told her, sliding into the seat next to her, despite the kitchen door. She turned to me, her carefully made-up face showing every year of her 60 years. "You've been laughing at me all this time," she said bitterly. "No, Margaret, I've been working all this time. Building something, just like you always wanted James to do." I stood up. "Happy birthday. The presidential suite is comped, of course. Family discount." I walked away, hearing her sharp intake of breath behind me. My phone buzzed. Andrew with updates about our new project in Dubai. Time to get back to work. The story wasn't over, of course. There would be fallout, explanations needed, relationships to rebuild or end. But for now, I had given Margaret exactly what she'd always wanted. A birthday party people would talk about for years to come. Just not for the reasons she planned. The morning after Margaret's birthday party, I woke up to 37 missed calls. Most were from James, who hadn't come home last night. A few from Sarah, probably checking on the fallout, and one from Margaret herself. I ignored them all and opened my laptop instead. The Asian markets were closing, and I had decisions to make. Being publicly revealed as Ms. Chen meant I could no longer maintain the careful separation between my personal and professional lives. Time to get ahead of the story. "Andrew," I said when he picked up, "schedule a press release. It's time to put a face to the Grand Haven brand." My phone buzzed again. "James." This time I answered. "Where are you?" His voice was rough, either from lack of sleep or too much drinking. In my home office, where I am every morning at 7. You have a home office. I closed my eyes. 5 years of marriage, and he'd never once asked what was behind the double doors in our east wing. Had never wondered why I disappeared there for hours each day. We need to talk, he said. Yes, we do. But first, I have a board meeting. Come by my office, my real office, at noon. Your office, he repeated, like the words were in a foreign language. At the Chen Industries building downtown. 37th floor. Tell reception your wife is expecting you. I hung up before he could respond. There was a certain satisfaction in knowing he'd have to say those words, my wife, to get to me now. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and damage control. Word had spread fast in our social circles about last night's revelation. My PR team was already fielding calls from business magazines wanting to know how Hartford's most successful female CEO had managed to keep such a low profile. At precisely noon, my assistant buzzed. Mr. Williams is here. Send him in. James walked into my office like a man entering foreign territory. His eyes swept over the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern art on the walls, the wall of awards I'd never displayed at home. He looked displaced in his casual clothes among the corporate sophistication. You've been busy, he said finally. For the past 15 years, yes. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, though you never noticed. He sat, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Mom's a mess. Of course that's what he led with. Always his mother first. Margaret's pride is hurt, I corrected. She'll survive. She says you humiliated her deliberately, set her up to fail at her own birthday party. No, she set herself up by trying to humiliate me. I just chose not to play the role she assigned me. James shifted uncomfortably. You could have told me about all this. Like you told me about agreeing to exclude me from the VIP section. He had the grace to look ashamed. That was wrong. I should have stood up to her. Yes, you should have. But you never do, James. And now I have to wonder, would knowing about my success have changed anything? Or would you have just had a different excuse for letting your mother treat me like dirt? My intercom buzzed. Ms. Chen, Tokyo is calling. Tell them 5 minutes. I looked at James. I have a company to run. We can continue this conversation at home. He stood looking lost. When will you be home? When I finish work. Like always. Understanding finally dawned on his face. All those times he thought I was at yoga, or shopping, or lunch with friends, I'd been here, building an empire while playing the role his family had cast me in. The next few weeks were a crash course in reality for the Williams family. Margaret, unable to face her social circle after the party, fled to her sister's house in Florida. Sarah, who'd always been kinder than the rest, called to apologize for her years of condescension. I just assumed, she said, because Mom said. A lot of people assumed, I replied. That was their mistake. The business press had a field day with my story. Hidden CEO. The woman who built an empire in secret ran one headline. Trophy wife or business mogul. The double life of Lily Chen Williams declared another. I gave exactly one interview to a respected business journal. When asked why I'd kept my professional life separate, my answer was simple. Success speaks for itself. I didn't need to announce it. The article went viral. James moved into our guest room. We were in limbo, not quite separated, not quite together. He attended therapy, trying to understand his role in enabling his mother's behavior. I watched him struggle with the realization that his trophy wife was more successful than he'd ever be. Margaret returned from Florida after a month, considerably subdued. She requested a meeting through James. I'll see her at the hotel, I decided. In the VIP lounge. She arrived exactly on time, dressed with her usual elegance but missing her usual arrogance. Vincent served us drinks without being asked. Champagne for me, water for her. You've redecorated, she said, looking around the lounge. Yes, the whole hotel is being renovated. We're expanding. She flinched at the we. I suppose you want me to apologize. No, Margaret, I don't need your apology. What I want is for you to understand something. I leaned forward. I am not the woman you imagined me to be. I never was. Your son married a CEO, not a trophy. And if you want any relationship with us going forward, you need to accept that reality. And if I can't, then you'll miss out on a lot more than VIP access to my hotels. She took a shaky breath. James is in therapy. Yes. Because of me? Because of himself. He's finally facing his own role in our dynamics. She stirred her water, the ice cubes clinking against the glass. And you? Will you forgive him? That depends on James, on whether he wants to be a partner or just a son who never grew up. The renovation works echoed through the building, a fitting soundtrack to our conversation about rebuilding. I looked you up, Margaret said finally. Your company, your achievements, the charity work. She paused. The scholarship program for underprivileged girls. Someone has to help the girls from nowhere achieve their dreams. She flushed, recognizing her own cool words thrown back at her. As she left, she turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I was wrong about you. I know, I replied. I always knew. That evening, I found James in my home office, really looking at it for the first time. He was studying the framed photo on my desk, us on our wedding day. I was so proud that day, he said without turning around. Proud that someone as beautiful as you had chosen me. I never thought to be proud of anything else about you. And now? He turned, his eyes red. Now I'm ashamed. Of myself, of how I let Mom treat you, of how little I knew my own wife. He swallowed hard. But mostly I'm in awe. Of everything you've built, of how strong you are. I don't deserve you. Probably not, I agreed. But deserving me isn't the point, James. Supporting me is. Being a true partner is. Can you do that? I want to try. He gestured to my desk. Show me. Tell me about your company, your work. Everything I should have asked about years ago. I sat down in my chair, watching him settle into the visitor's seat, just like in my downtown office. But this time, he was ready to listen. It started 15 years ago. I began with one small hotel and a dream. 3 months after Margaret's birthday party, we hosted another event at the Grand Haven. The official launch of our Asian expansion, combined with the announcement of a new scholarship foundation for women in business. James stood beside me as I gave my speech, his hand supportive on my back. Margaret sat in the audience, not in the VIP section, but not by the kitchen either. Progress comes in small steps. Sarah had joined my board of directors, bringing her legal expertise to the company. She'd broken free of Margaret's influence, finding her own voice in the process. As for me, I was finally fully myself. Lily Chen Williams, CEO of Grand Haven Hotels, and a woman who had built her success one careful brick at a time. No more hiding, no more playing small to soothe others' insecurities. The trophy wife was gone. In her place stood what had been there all along, a woman who had built an empire while others underestimated her. A woman who had turned assumptions into advantages and silence into strength. After all, sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's success on your own terms.
The annual Mitchell family reunion was in full swing at Uncle Robert's Hampton estate. The usual suspects gathered around the infinity pool, sipping champagne and comparing achievements like Olympic medals. And that's how I made partner, my cousin Derek announced to appreciative murmurs, adjusting his Rolex. Youngest in the firm's history. I sat quietly in my corner, nursing a sparkling water, wearing simple linen pants and a white button-down that probably cost more than Derek's car. Not that anyone would know. The beauty of quiet wealth is that it doesn't need logos. Sarah, darling. Aunt Patricia's voice carried across the pool. Tell everyone about your new position at Goldman. My sister preened, her designer sundress catching the late afternoon light. Oh, it's nothing really. Just made managing director. The youngest female MD in their Asian division. More appreciative noises. More champagne poured. More subtle glances in my direction. And Elena? Uncle Robert's attention turned to me, his tone carrying that familiar mix of concern and condescension. Still finding yourself? The conversation lulled. 30 pairs of eyes turned to me, waiting for my response. The black sheep. The disappointment. The one who hadn't figured it out yet. Something like that, I said, checking my phone. 4:58 p.m. Almost time. You know, Mom chimed in, her tennis bracelet glinting. Anderson Consulting is always looking for bright young people. I'm sure Sarah could put in a word. I'm good, thanks. I took another sip of water, hiding my smile behind the glass. Elena, dear, Aunt Patricia leaned forward, pearls swaying. You're 30 now. Don't you think it's time to get serious? Find a real career. Sarah nodded sagely. My division has an entry-level program. Perfect for someone your age who's just starting out. I checked my phone again. 4:59 p.m. The Bloomberg app was open, waiting. The thing about success, Uncle Robert began his familiar lecture, is that you have to want it. Take this house for example. $20 million of wanting it. 22, his wife corrected, surveying her domain. After the new wing. Speaking of property, cousin Mark jumped in. My hedge fund just closed $1 billion deal in Singapore. Real estate portfolio. Very exclusive. 5 p.m. My phone buzzed. That's wonderful, Mark, I said, standing up. Which buildings? He blinked, surprised I'd asked. The Marina Bay Complex. Most exclusive address in Southeast Asia. Not that you'd. He trailed off, too polite to finish the thought. Interesting. I walked over to the outdoor TV where CNBC played quietly. Would that be the East or West Tower? Both actually, he said proudly. The whole complex. I pressed a button on my phone. The TV screen changed, Bloomberg News taking over. Breaking news, the anchor announced. The mysterious CEO behind Atlas Technologies has finally been identified. Elena Mitchell, age 30, has been revealed as the founder of the $86 billion tech empire. The champagne glass in Sarah's hand slipped, splashing into the pool. Sources confirm that Mitchell, who has operated in complete anonymity for the past 7 years, controls a vast portfolio including real estate, technology, and renewable energy assets. Her estimated net worth, $12.4 billion. Uncle Robert's lecture about success died in his throat. That's impossible, Derek stammered. Elena doesn't even have a real job. The TV showed my official photo taken last week in my penthouse office. Mitchell's Atlas Technologies owns controlling interest in several major tech companies, as well as significant real estate holdings across Asia, including the entire Marina Bay district in Singapore. Mark's face went pale. The Marina Bay Complex. Own the company that just bought your hedge fund? I smiled. Yes. The paperwork should be hitting your desk right about. My phone buzzed again. Yow. Mom's tennis bracelet suddenly looked very small. Sarah's managing director title felt very junior. Uncle Robert's $22 million house seemed rather quaint. But you're always working from cafes, Aunt Patricia whispered. In those simple clothes. My simple shirt? I touched the white linen. It's from my private clothing line. This piece alone costs more than Derek's partnership buy-in. The TV continued its revelation. Atlas Technologies, under Mitchell's leadership, has revolutionized quantum computing and AI integration. The company's market cap exceeds the GDP of several small nations. 7 years, Sarah managed to say. You've been running this for 7 years? While you were all counting titles and comparing bonuses? I pulled up my portfolio app. I was counting billions and comparing continents. The family gathered around the TV, watching as their carefully constructed hierarchy crumbled in real time. My face filled the screen again, accompanied by graphics showing Atlas Technologies' global reach. That gap year in Singapore? I continued, enjoying their stunned expressions. I was building our Asian headquarters. Those dead-end coding jobs you mocked? They were my cover while I developed our quantum AI system. Uncle Robert sank into a pool chair. 12.4 billion. That's an old number, I said, checking my latest notifications. Bloomberg needs to update their figures. We crossed 13 billion this morning. The sound of helicopter blades filled the air. Right on schedule. That would be my ride, I said, gathering my things. Board meeting in Singapore. About that real estate deal you were so proud of, Mark? The helicopter appeared over the trees, my company's logo gleaming on its side. The afternoon sun caught the letters just right, casting a shadow over the pool where my family stood frozen. Wait. Sarah's voice barely carried over the helicopter's approach. You can't just drop this and leave. I turned back, taking in the scene I'd waited 7 years to witness. The spilled champagne floating in the infinity pool, the shocked faces of my successful relatives, Mom's suddenly cheap-looking jewelry catching the fading sunlight. Actually, I smiled, checking my phone as more notifications poured in. But since the board can wait 10 minutes, let's talk about success, shall we? The helicopter touched down on Uncle Robert's prized lawn, the downwash creating ripples in the pool. My security team materialized from unmarked cars parked along the driveway. 7 years, Derek muttered, still staring at the TV. All those times we invited you to networking events. I was probably busy buying the venues, I finished for him. That exclusive club you're so proud of joining? I own the building. The golf course where Uncle Robert closes his big deals? Atlas Technologies acquired it last year. Mom stepped forward, her tennis bracelet catching the light. Elena, darling, why didn't you tell us? Tell you. I laughed, the sound carrying across the suddenly silent backyard. Like when I tried to explain my first patent and you interrupted to brag about Sarah's bonus. Or when I attempted to share news about our quantum breakthrough, and Aunt Patricia suggested I try temp work. The TV continued its expose. Atlas Technologies' revolutionary quantum AI system has been secretly powering major financial institutions worldwide. Sources say Mitchell's personal tech patents are valued at over $8 billion. $8 billion in patents alone, Uncle Robert whispered, his $22 million house suddenly feeling very modest. I pulled out my tablet, projecting a holographic display of Atlas Technologies' global holdings. Red dots illuminated our properties across every continent: offices, research centers, residential complexes. See that cluster in Singapore, Mark? I zoomed in on the Marina Bay area. Your hedge fund didn't close $1 billion deal. You were part of my deal. I own everything in that district. Mark's perfectly tailored suit seemed to deflate. The merger paperwork is just the beginning, I finished. Atlas is absorbing your fund. Though you might want to update your resume, we have rather high standards for middle management. Sarah stepped forward, her business instincts finally kicking in. Elena, surely we could discuss some family synergy. Goldman would be very interested in. Goldman. I raised an eyebrow. Check your phone, sis. They're probably calling right now about the Atlas Technologies account. We're their biggest client in Asia. On cue, Sarah's phone buzzed. Her face paled as she read the message. That's right, I continued. Your little sister is the mysterious client your bosses have been trying to meet for 3 years. How's that for an entry-level position? The Bloomberg broadcast shifted to footage of my company's headquarters, a stunning 1,000-foot tower that made Uncle Robert's estate look like a guest house. Remember last Christmas? I turned to Aunt Patricia. When you said I needed to grow up and get a real job? I was finalizing the purchase of your husband's company. He just doesn't know it yet. Uncle Robert choked on his champagne. Patricia's husband's company? But that's a Fortune 500. Was a Fortune 500, I corrected, checking my watch. The announcement goes public tomorrow. Atlas Technologies now owns controlling interest in the top 5 companies in that sector. Mom sank into a pool chair, her carefully maintained composure cracking. All this time, those little cafes you worked from are part of my global chain, I said. That simple coffee shop where you found me last month? The building alone is worth more than this entire estate. The helicopter pilot's voice came through my earpiece. Ms. Mitchell, Singapore is waiting. Time to go, I announced, heading toward the helicopter. Oh, and Uncle Robert? About the new wing you're so proud of. Yes, he managed, still shell-shocked. Atlas Technologies just acquired the company that holds your mortgage. You might want to check the new terms. Premium properties require premium payments, after all. The security team moved forward, creating a path through my stunned relatives. The helicopter's blades cast spinning shadows across their faces, each one processing their new reality. The annual family reunion next year, I called over my shoulder, will be at my Singapore penthouse. Do try to dress appropriately, if you can afford it. The look on their faces as I stepped into the helicopter was worth every second of the past 7 years. Every dismissive comment, every condescending suggestion, every missed opportunity to recognize what was building right in front of them. As we lifted off, I caught one last glimpse of my family gathered around the pool, their achievements suddenly seeming very small from up here. The helicopter lifted higher, but I pressed the intercom. Hold position, James. Through the tinted windows, I watched my family scrambling below, their designer outfits now wrinkled from stress, their perfect composure shattered. Uncle Robert was frantically checking his phone, probably seeing the notifications about his mortgage. Sarah was on a call, likely her Goldman superiors demanding answers about her mysterious sister. I activated the external speakers. One more thing. They froze, faces turned upward like worshippers at an altar. How quickly the dynamic had shifted. Check your portfolios. My voice boomed across the yard. All of them. On cue, phones started buzzing. Notifications pinged. Faces paled. That's right, I continued, enjoying every second. Atlas Technologies doesn't just own buildings. We own controlling interest in most of your investment portfolios. Those secure stocks you're so proud of? I've been quietly buying them for years. Derek's Rolex suddenly looked very heavy on his wrist. But my broker works for a firm I acquired last month. I projected financial data onto the side of Uncle Robert's house, the numbers glowing in the evening light. In fact, let's play a game. Anyone here who doesn't technically work for me, raise your hand. No hands went up. The silence was delicious. Your law firm, Derek? Atlas Technologies is the majority shareholder. Your hospital board position, Aunt Patricia? We own the healthcare network. That exclusive banking division you're so proud of, Sarah? Check who purchased controlling interest last quarter. Mom stepped forward, her voice shaking. Elena, please. We're your family. Family. I pulled up another projection. Every dismissive email, every mocking text, every condescending holiday card from the past 7 years. Like when you were family to me? The messages floated in the air like accusations. Elena needs to grow up and get a real job. Some of us actually work for a living. When will you stop playing with computers? While you were sending these, I continued, I was building an empire. That computer game you mocked, Mom? It's now worth more than everything the Mitchell family has owned in its entire history. The Bloomberg broadcast was still playing on the outdoor TV. Sources say Mitchell's quantum AI system has revolutionized global finance. Major banks are reportedly paying billions for access. Those banks include all of yours, I added. Every transaction you make, every investment you choose, every dollar you spend, it all runs through my system. Sarah's phone kept buzzing. Goldman CEO, she whispered, staring at the screen. Tell him I said hi, I smiled. Though he might be busy dealing with the Atlas Technologies account. We're moving it to a more competent team. The color drained from her face as she realized what that meant for her career. The annual bonus you bragged about last Christmas? That's what my company makes in 8 seconds. Uncle Robert stepped forward, his voice hoarse. There must be some way we can work together. As a family. Like how you worked with me. I projected another set of documents. The startup funding you refused to back? The business plan you called juvenile? That juvenile plan is now worth more than your entire net worth multiplied by 1,000. The helicopter's searchlight swept across the yard, illuminating their shocked faces. But don't worry, I continued, you'll all get invitations to the Atlas Technologies annual gala. Very exclusive. 10 million per table. 10 million. Aunt Patricia clutched her pearls. If you can afford it, I shrugged. Though given the new terms on all your mortgages, investments and loans, you might want to start saving now. Mom took another step forward. Elena, sweetheart, surely we can discuss this. We are discussing it, I cut her off. In fact, this is the most attention you've paid to my career in 7 years. Funny how $13 billion changes people's perspective. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across Uncle Robert's prized lawn. My security team stood ready, watching as the mighty Mitchell family realized they were now essentially my employees. The board meeting in Singapore starts in 3 hours, I said, checking my watch. We're discussing some exciting acquisitions. Who knows? Maybe I'll buy a few more of your companies. Please, Sarah called out, her managing director confidence completely gone. What do you want from us? I laughed, the sound echoing across the perfectly manicured grounds. From you? Nothing. You've already given me everything I needed. 7 years of motivation to prove you all wrong. The helicopter lifted higher and I watched them shrink, designer clothes suddenly seeming shabby, luxury watches looking like costume jewelry, their proud achievements reduced to entries on my company's balance sheet. Next family reunion is in Singapore, I called down. First-class tickets will be provided, assuming you still qualify for your corporate travel accounts. As we banked toward the city, I took one last look at the Mitchell family estate. They stood frozen around the infinity pool, their reflections rippling in the water, their world forever changed. The Thompson family's annual summer party was in full swing at their Hamptons estate. Cocktails flowed as freely as the boasts about property portfolios and real estate empires. The usual game of one-upmanship had started before the first martini was poured. Just closed on another building in Manhattan, my brother Thomas announced, adjusting his Rolex. 40 stories, prime location. $2 billion acquisition. Wonderful, darling. Mom beamed, her diamonds catching the sunset. And Rebecca's development in Miami is almost complete, isn't it, dear? My sister nodded, Hermes scarf flowing in the ocean breeze. 3 towers, each over 60 floors. The most exclusive address in South Beach. I sat quietly by the infinity pool, sipping water from a crystal glass. My simple white linen dress and lack of jewelry made me practically invisible among the family's carefully curated display of wealth. Just how I preferred it. And what about you, Alexandra? Dad's attention turned to me, his voice carrying that familiar mix of pity and disappointment. Still in that little studio downtown? The conversation lulled. All eyes turned to the family. Disappointment. 33, unmarried, and apparently wasting my Stanford business degree on a modest lifestyle. Something like that, I said, checking my phone. 5:58 p.m. Almost time. Rebecca sighed dramatically. You know, one of our developments has some lovely starter units. Perfect for someone on a limited budget. I'm good, thanks. I took another sip of water, hiding my smile. Alexandra, darling, Mom set down her martini. Don't you think it's time to invest in something substantial? Your brother could help. I finished, checking the time again. 5:59 p.m. I appreciate the offer, but I'm doing fine. Thomas snorted. Fine? Living in a studio while managing other people's buildings? That's not exactly success in this family. Dad nodded sagely. The Thompson name means something in real estate. We have standards to maintain. 6 p.m. Right on schedule. Speaking of standards, I said, standing up, would anyone like to see what I've actually been managing? Rebecca rolled her eyes. Another small property management contract? I walked over to the outdoor TV, where CNBC played quietly in the background. With one tap on my phone, the channel changed to Wall Street Journal Live. Breaking news, the anchor announced. In what's being called the largest real estate revelation in decades, the mysterious owner behind Atlas Properties has finally been identified. The martini glass slipped from Mom's perfectly manicured hands. Alexandra Thompson, age 33, has been revealed as the CEO behind the $89 billion real estate empire. Sources confirm that Thompson has been operating in complete anonymity for the past 7 years, building what experts now call the most valuable private property portfolio in the world. That's impossible, Thomas whispered, his 40-story acquisition suddenly feeling very small. The screen filled with my official photo, taken in my real office, the one that made their corporate headquarters look like a storage closet. Thompson's holdings include over 70% of luxury properties in major urban centers, with a portfolio spanning residential, commercial, and mixed-use developments across 3 continents. 70%? Rebecca choked on her champagne. Actually, I turned to face my stunned family. That number's a bit low. We crossed 75% last month. Mom's hand flew to her diamonds. But you live in a studio. You mean the penthouse of my first building? I smiled, pulling up the ownership documents on my phone. I like to keep an eye on my properties. All 4,000 of them. 7 years, Dad managed to say. You've been running this for 7 years? While you were counting Thomas's floors? I projected my company's global holdings onto the pool house wall. I was counting cities. That little studio, you mocked? It's worth more than your entire Hamptons estate. The broadcast continued. Atlas Properties' revolutionary approach to luxury development has reshaped urban skylines worldwide. Thompson's personal net worth is estimated at $32.6 billion. Thomas's Rolex suddenly looked like costume jewelry. Rebecca's Miami towers felt like sandcastles. Dad's real estate empire seemed quaint. $2 billion for a building? I quoted Thomas's earlier boast. That's what my portfolio generates in monthly rental income. From one city. The sound of helicopter blades filled the air. Right on schedule. That would be my ride, I said, gathering my things. Board meeting in Dubai. We're announcing some acquisitions tomorrow. Rebecca, you might want to check which Miami properties. A sleek black helicopter appeared over the beach, my company's logo gleaming on the side. The buildings that had made me billions stretched along the horizon, their lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Wait. Rebecca stood, her Hermes scarf fluttering. You can't just drop this bombshell and leave? I smiled, watching as my security team appeared by the pool. Actually, I can. And I have a real estate empire worth more than this entire zip code to manage. The cocktails grew warm on the bar, forgotten like all their assumptions about their little sister who just managed properties. Oh, and Dad. I paused by the gate. This Hamptons estate you're so proud of? He looked up, face pale. What about it? Check your deed. Atlas Properties acquired this entire street last week. Your new lease terms arrive tomorrow. Alexandra Victoria Thompson. Mom's voice carried over the helicopter's whir. You will explain yourself this instant. I turned back, savoring the moment. The expensive cocktails sat untouched as my helicopter cast shadows across their prized infinity pool. The one they'd bragged about in Architectural Digest last year. Explain myself? I picked up the glossy magazine from the poolside table. Like how your exclusive Hamptons feature failed to mention that Atlas Properties owns the magazine. And this house. And most of the properties they featured. Mom's diamonds seemed to dim. But the article said. The media company that published it? I tossed the magazine into the pool. I acquired them last quarter. Just like I own the firm that handles your real estate listings, Thomas. My brother's perfect composure cracked. What are you talking about? Your exclusive brokerage? I pulled up holographic property records. They're an Atlas subsidiary. Every commission, every deal, every transaction, it all flows through my companies. Rebecca's Miami developer pride made one last attempt. Our developments are independent. Are they? I smiled, expanding the hologram. Check your phone. Your biggest investor is probably calling right now. On cue, her phone buzzed. The color drained from her face as she read the message. That's right, I continued. That anonymous funding for your Miami project? It's Atlas Properties money. You've basically been developing my land this whole time. The Wall Street Journal broadcast deepened the wound. Sources say Atlas Properties controls an estimated 80% of luxury development rights in major urban centers. Thompson's portfolio is reportedly worth more than the next 5 largest real estate companies combined. More than the next 5. Dad muttered, his real estate empire suddenly looking very provincial. All those times you asked about our development strategies. I was monitoring my investments, I nodded. Though, investment might be the wrong word when you own the entire market. The pool house wall displayed my empire's reach, skyscrapers spanning continents, developments reshaping skylines, property portfolios that made their luxury projects look like starter homes. But you live so modestly, Mom whispered, touching her diamond necklace nervously. Modestly? I laughed. Like when I tried to tell you about my first billion-dollar acquisition. The one you interrupted to brag about Thomas's massive 40-story purchase. I pulled up old family chat messages. Real success means owning trophy properties. When will you invest in something substantial? At least Rebecca understands luxury development. While you were sending these, I projected my company's latest valuations. I was building the largest private real estate empire in history. Every prime location, every luxury development, every major market. I own it all. Thomas's phone started ringing. The board of directors, he whispered. Probably about tomorrow's announcement. I checked my watch. Atlas is consolidating its holdings. Only the most profitable properties will remain in our portfolio. His $2 billion building suddenly seemed very vulnerable. Your annual revenue? I continued. My portfolio generates that in rental income by breakfast. Dad stood up, developer instincts finally engaging. Surely we can discuss some kind of family venture. Like when you told my early investors I was playing landlord? I pulled up more records. They're all my tenants now. The ones who listen to you are paying premium rents in my buildings. The security team's earpieces pulsed with incoming messages. Dubai was waiting. But let's talk about real estate. I activated another holographic display showing my personal holdings. Since you're all suddenly so interested in my portfolio. Darling, Mom tried again, we always wanted you to succeed. Really? I enlarged a particular property record. Like when you laughed at my first building purchase. It's worth more than your entire Hamptons compound. Actually, I checked my phone, I just acquired the last independent property on this beach. The deed transferred this morning. This beach. Rebecca's voice cracked. But this is the most exclusive stretch in the Hamptons. Was the most exclusive, I corrected. Now it's just another Atlas Properties asset. Speaking of which, your new rental terms will arrive tomorrow. The security team moved forward. Miss Thompson, Dubai is expecting you. Of course, I gathered my things. Oh, and Thomas? About that 40-story building you're so proud of. He looked up, Rolex glinting weakly in the fading light. I own the air rights above it. And the land under it. And the buildings around it. Enjoy being my tenant. One last thing, I said, turning back as my security team paused. The helicopter's blades cut through the evening air, casting moving shadows across their precious Hamptons lawn. Now my Hamptons lawn. Remember when you said I was wasting my potential managing other people's buildings? I picked up the property brochure lying on the pool chair. Let's discuss what management really means. Mom shifted uncomfortably in her designer lounger. Alexandra, sweetheart, we only wanted to guide me. I projected a new set of holograms. Like when you guided potential investors away from my first development project? Images filled the air, charity galas, real estate functions, society events. In each one, a quiet figure in simple clothes stood in the background, observing. That's. Thomas leaned forward. You were at all these events. Every major real estate gathering for the past 7 years, I confirmed. While you were networking with small-time developers, I was quietly acquiring their entire portfolios. The Wall Street Journal broadcast shifted. Breaking. Global property markets in turmoil as Atlas Properties revelation sends shockwaves through real estate sector. Multiple development CEOs reported to be in emergency meetings. That luxury real estate summit in Dubai last winter? I turned to Rebecca. When you were so proud to be speaking on that development panel. I owned the venue. And the development rights. And most of the properties being showcased. Rebecca's hands trembled as she reached for her champagne. All this time. And Thomas's exclusive broker convention? I continued. Where you told everyone I was still finding my footing? I was there deciding which property portfolios to absorb in our next acquisition. Thomas's perfect posture slumped. What acquisition? Tomorrow's announcement, I smiled. Atlas Properties isn't just buying buildings anymore. We're consolidating the entire luxury real estate market. Only the most valuable properties will remain. Though being modest might actually be an advantage now. The helicopter's spotlights swept across the beach, illuminating my properties as far as the eye could see. But what's truly ironic, I picked up Mom's property magazine, is how quick you were to dismiss the quiet one. The observer. The one who built an empire while you were bragging about single buildings. We never dismissed, Dad started. Really? I activated a final hologram. Like when you said I'd never understand true luxury? Let's talk about luxury, Dad. The air filled with real-time valuations, global properties, development rights, entire city blocks. All under my control. Every exclusive address you brag about? I own it. Every prime location you covet? I control it. Every luxury development in your portfolio? It's sitting on my land. The security team's earpieces pulsed again. Dubai couldn't wait much longer. You know what I learned from this family? I surveyed their shocked faces. That true power isn't in showing off wealth. It's in controlling the very ground beneath the wealthy's feet. Dad's developer pride made one final stand. Now listen here. Listen to what? I cut him off. How your modest daughter revolutionized real estate. How the one you called small time now owns the skylines you only dreamed of controlling. The Wall Street Journal ticker told the story. Atlas Properties market cap exceeds combined value of all major real estate investment trusts. Thompson's portfolio reshapes global property markets. Still in that little studio? I quoted their favorite taunt. Funny how a little studio sounds when it's part of a $32 billion portfolio. Though that number's already outdated. I pulled up my real-time net worth. Thomas's Rolex suddenly looked very cheap as he saw the figure. That's not possible, he whispered. Possible? I laughed. I passed possible 5 years ago. While you were bragging about floors, I was quietly buying cities. The helicopter's engines grew more insistent. Miss Thompson, my chief of security spoke softly, Dubai is waiting. Of course, I nodded. Global real estate doesn't pause for family drama. Unlike your development projects, my empire actually requires attention. I headed for the helipad, then paused. Oh, and Mom? That Hampton's social registry you're so proud of. She looked up nervously. Yes. I own the organization that publishes it. Next month's issue has some interesting updates about property ownership in the area. Apparently, modesty isn't the only thing this family got wrong about me. The helicopter spotlights illuminated their stunned faces one last time. The expensive cocktails grew warm, forgotten like their assumptions about the quiet daughter who just managed properties. Happy summer, I called out. The property management office will contact you about the new lease terms. Being neighbors with the largest real estate empire in history tends to affect rental rates. The mahogany-paneled conference room at the Thompson family law firm buzzed with the familiar energy of our quarterly business meeting. Michael Thompson, my older brother by 3 years, dominated the conversation from his position at the head of the table, his perfectly tailored Armani suit and gold Rolex catching the afternoon light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. As the managing partner of Thompson & Associates, he never missed an opportunity to remind everyone in the room, and especially me, of his professional superiority. Revenue is up 18% this quarter, Michael announced, spreading the quarterly reports across the conference table like a poker player revealing a winning hand. The pharmaceutical liability case alone brought in $4.2 million in fees. It's what happens when you pursue serious professional careers instead of playing around in community health clinics. The comment was directed at me, of course. Dr. Emma Thompson, the family disappointment who had somehow managed to waste her medical degree on what Michael consistently referred to as glorified social work. I sat quietly in my simple navy blazer, sipping coffee from a paper cup while my family members discussed their various business achievements around the polished table. My sister-in-law, Victoria, a successful pharmaceutical sales director, nodded approvingly at Michael's presentation. It's impressive what real ambition can accomplish. Speaking of which, Emma, are you still working at that little clinic in the downtown area? The one with all the underprivileged patients. Westside Community Health, I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral. Yes, I'm still there. Michael leaned back in his leather chair, his expression mixing condescension with what he probably thought was brotherly concern. Emma, you're 34 years old with an MD from Johns Hopkins. Do you realize what you could be earning in private practice? Or better yet, hospital administration? Instead, you're wasting your talent on charity cases and government healthcare programs. Our father, retired Judge Harrison Thompson, chimed in from his position near the window. Your brother has a point, sweetheart. You have so much potential, but you're not maximizing your opportunities. Michael built this firm into a powerhouse by thinking strategically about his career. Maybe it's time you considered doing the same. Dad's right, Michael continued, warming to his favorite topic. Clinic worker isn't a real medical career. It's what people do when they can't handle the pressure of real medicine. You're basically a government employee with a medical degree, treating people who can't pay for proper health care. I stirred my coffee slowly, listening to the familiar refrain. This conversation happened every few months, usually triggered by some new success story Michael wanted to share about his legal practice or some article he'd read about physician salaries in private practice. The thing is, Michael continued, his voice taking on the patronizing tone he'd perfected over years of courtroom work, you're not even practicing real medicine. You're doing basic primary care, prescribing antibiotics, handling minor procedures. Any nurse practitioner could do what you're doing. You're operating below your training level." Victoria nodded enthusiastically. "Michael showed me the salary data for emergency medicine physicians. You could be making 3 times what you earn at that clinic. And the prestige factor. Being an ER doctor at a major hospital versus working at a community health center? There's no comparison." My phone buzzed with a text message from my chief financial officer. Q3 hospital network revenues. $847 million. Board meeting scheduled for Thursday. I glanced at it briefly before returning my attention to my family's career counseling session. "I appreciate the concern," I said quietly, "but I'm satisfied with my work at Westside." Michael laughed, the same condescending chuckle he'd used since we were children. "Satisfied? Emma, satisfaction doesn't pay for retirement. It doesn't build wealth. You're essentially throwing away your medical degree on a job that any mid-level provider could handle. It's career suicide." The conversation continued in this vein for another hour, with various family members offering their perspectives on my professional shortcomings. My uncle Robert, who owned a chain of urgent care centers, suggested I could work for him, doing real medicine with paying customers. My cousin Jennifer, married to an orthopedic surgeon, shared stories about their recent vacation to Tuscany, funded by her husband's lucrative spine surgery practice. Through it all, I maintained my composure, occasionally nodding or offering brief responses. They had no idea that my position at Westside Community Health was strategic. A way to stay connected to frontline patient care while managing my other responsibilities. They didn't know that my modest Honda Accord was parked next to a Tesla and 2 BMWs in my private garage, or that the tiny apartment they imagined I lived in was actually a penthouse overlooking the city. As the meeting wound down, Michael's phone rang. His expression shifted from confident to concerned as he listened to the caller. "What do you mean irregular heartbeat? When did this start?" "Okay, I'll be there in 30 minutes. He hung up and turned to the room, his previous swagger replaced by visible worry. "Victoria's been having chest pains and irregular heart rhythms. Her cardiologist wants to admit her for immediate evaluation. Possible cardiac catheterization, maybe even emergency surgery." The family's attention immediately shifted to Michael's crisis. Business discussions forgotten as we processed this unexpected medical emergency. Victoria, who had been radiating health and confidence moments earlier, suddenly looked pale and frightened. "Which hospital?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "St. Catherine's Medical Center," Michael replied, gathering his papers hastily. "It's where her cardiologist has privileges. Dr. Martinez says they have the best cardiac surgery program in the region." I nodded, familiar with both the hospital and Dr. Martinez. "That's good. You'll be in excellent hands there. Emma, would you mind coming with us?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I know you're not a cardiologist, but having a doctor in the family there might be helpful. Even if you're just a clinic worker, you understand medical terminology better than we do." "Of course," I replied, already calculating the drive time to St. Catherine's and mentally reviewing Victoria's risk factors based on her family history and lifestyle. The ride to the hospital was tense, with Michael alternating between aggressive driving and worried phone calls to various family members. Victoria sat in the passenger seat, monitoring her heart rate with her fitness tracker and describing her symptoms in increasingly anxious detail. We arrived at St. Catherine's Medical Center as the sun was setting, the imposing glass and steel structure illuminated against the darkening sky. The cardiac unit was on the 7th floor, accessible through a dedicated elevator that required special access cards, a security measure I'd implemented 3 years earlier during the hospital's major renovation and expansion project. Dr. Martinez met us in the cardiac consultation room, his expression serious as he reviewed Victoria's test results. The EKG shows some concerning irregularities, and her cardiac enzymes are elevated. "I want to perform an emergency cardiac catheterization to evaluate for blockages, and depending on what we find, she may need immediate surgical intervention." "What kind of surgery?" Michael asked, his legal training kicking in as he processed the medical information. "Potentially bypass surgery or minimally invasive valve repair. The exact procedure will depend on what we discover during the catheterization. However, Any major cardiac surgery at this hospital requires approval from our chief of surgery before we can proceed. Michael's face tightened with frustration. How long does that approval process take? Victoria needs immediate care, not bureaucratic delays. It's not bureaucratic, Dr. Martinez explained patiently. It's a quality control measure. Our chief of surgery reviews all high-risk cases to ensure optimal outcomes. But don't worry, she's extremely experienced and typically very responsive to emergency consultations. A nurse approached our group, tablet in hand. Dr. Martinez, the chief of surgery, is here for the consultation. Should I bring her in? Please do, Dr. Martinez replied. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, you'll find that our chief of surgery is exceptional. She's pioneered several cardiac procedures and has one of the best success rates in the country. Your wife will be in excellent hands. The consultation room door opened and I walked in carrying Victoria's medical files, having changed into my surgical scrubs and white coat. The nameplate on my coat read, Dr. Emma Thompson, MD, Chief of Cardiovascular Surgery. Hello, Michael, I said calmly, settling into the chair across from my brother and opening Victoria's chart. Dr. Martinez has briefed me on Victoria's condition. I've reviewed her test results and I believe we can help her. The silence that followed was profound. Michael's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning comprehension as he processed what he was seeing. Victoria stared at me with wide eyes, as if trying to reconcile the clinic worker from the family meeting with the chief of surgery sitting before her. Emma. Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. What? How? You're the chief of surgery? I am, I confirmed, turning to Victoria's EKG readings. I'm also the director of cardiac services and a member of the hospital's board of directors. Now let's focus on Victoria's treatment. Based on these results, I recommend immediate catheterization followed by minimally invasive bypass surgery. We can likely avoid opening the chest entirely. Dr. Martinez nodded approvingly. Dr. Thompson is being modest. She developed the minimally invasive technique she's recommending. It's been adopted by cardiac programs nationwide and significantly reduces recovery time. As the medical team prepared Victoria for her procedures, Michael pulled me aside in the hallway. His earlier confidence had completely evaporated, replaced by a mixture of amazement and bewilderment. Emma, I don't understand. You work at a community clinic. You drive an old car. You live in a small apartment. How are you the chief of surgery at one of the most prestigious hospitals in the region? I smiled, checking Victoria's preoperative orders on my tablet. Michael, I work 1 day a week at Westside Community Health because I founded it 5 years ago to provide cardiac care to underserved populations. The rest of my time is spent here at St. Catherine's, where I've been chief of cardiovascular surgery for 7 years. But why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were just a clinic worker? Because every time I tried to share anything about my actual work, you dismissed it as not real medicine or charity work. You decided what my career was worth before you ever bothered to learn what I actually do. The truth continued to unfold as Victoria underwent her procedures. Michael learned that the little apartment I supposedly lived in was actually the penthouse level of the medical building adjacent to the hospital, designed for the convenience of the chief of surgery during emergency situations. The old Honda was my backup vehicle, used when I wanted to maintain a low profile at family events. But the biggest revelation came when Dr. Martinez mentioned the hospital's recent expansion project. Dr. Thompson's vision really transformed this place, he told Michael as we waited outside the catheterization lab. Her donation of $12.5 million funded the new cardiac wing, and her surgical innovations have made us the regional leader in cardiac care. Michael stared at me with complete bewilderment. You donated $12.5 million? Emma, where did you get that kind of money? Surgical patents, consulting fees, and some strategic investments in medical technology companies, I replied matter-of-factly. When you develop new surgical techniques, the licensing agreements can be quite lucrative. Plus, I serve on several corporate boards in the medical device industry. The surgery went perfectly. Victoria's recovery was swift and uncomplicated, thanks to the minimally invasive approach I'd developed and the state-of-the-art equipment I'd helped fund. As she was transferred to the cardiac recovery unit, Michael sat in stunned silence, processing the complete reversal of everything he thought he knew about his sister's life and career. "Emma, I owe you a massive apology," he said finally. "We all do. I've been completely wrong about everything." "You weren't wrong about me working at a clinic, Michael. I do work there and I love it. You were wrong about thinking that was all I do and wrong about assuming it wasn't valuable work." Over the next few days, as Victoria recovered in one of the private suites I'd personally designed, Michael began to understand the full scope of my professional achievements. The phone calls from colleagues, the medical journals featuring my research, the pharmaceutical executives seeking my input on new cardiac devices. It all painted a picture of someone operating at the highest levels of medical practice and innovation. The family dynamic shifted dramatically once the truth emerged. The quarterly business meetings took on a different tone when Michael realized that his sister's annual income from patents, consulting and surgical practice exceeded his law firm's total revenue. The career advice sessions stopped entirely when they learned that I was regularly consulted by the Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic on complex cardiac cases. But what affected Michael most was watching me work. During Victoria's recovery, he saw me moving through the hospital with quiet authority, making life and death decisions, leading surgical teams and advancing medical knowledge through research and innovation. The clinic worker he'd dismissed was actually saving lives and pioneering treatments that would benefit cardiac patients worldwide. As Victoria prepared for discharge, she took my hand and squeezed it gently. "Emma, I don't know how to thank you. You saved my life, and you did it after listening to us criticize your career for years. You don't need to thank me, Victoria. Taking care of family is what we do." Michael appeared in the doorway, his expression thoughtful. "Emma, can I ask you something? Why do you still work at the community clinic? With everything else you have going on, why spend time there?" I considered the question as I reviewed Victoria's discharge instructions. Because that's where I remember why I became a doctor in the first place. The cardiac surgery, the patents, the board positions, those are all important. But at Westside, I take care of people who have nowhere else to go. It keeps me grounded in the actual purpose of medicine. As we walked to the parking garage, Michael shook his head in amazement. "I can't believe I called you just a clinic worker. You're one of the most accomplished surgeons in the country, and I was too arrogant to see it." "Michael, I am a clinic worker. I'm also a lot of other things. The mistake wasn't in observing what I do. It was in assuming you understood the full picture based on limited information." The drive home was quiet, each of us processing the events of the past week. Michael's phone buzzed with messages from family members who had heard about Victoria's surgery and, inevitably, about my role in saving her life. The story would spread quickly through our extended family and social circles. The relative they'd dismissed as underachieving was actually a world-renowned cardiac surgeon. Some family revelations end with awkward apologies and promises to do better. This one ended with my brother finally understanding that the person he thought he knew best had been operating at a level of professional excellence he'd never imagined possible. More importantly, it ended with Victoria alive and healthy, recovering from surgery performed by someone who had never stopped caring about helping people, regardless of whether they could afford to pay for it. The next time someone suggests that clinic work isn't real medicine, Michael will have a very different perspective to offer.